Hey guys, welcome to episode one of the Rebrand podcast. Today I have one of my good friends and realtors, Jeri Sheats. You'll get an intro from him here shortly, but I wanted to just dive right in. Jeri, thanks so much for joining me. If you don't mind, kind of just starting, kind of give people a background where you like how you started in real estate and what your journey has been and where you are now.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, especially, it feels kind of special being the first guest of a rebrand. So appreciate that. No, so I've been an agent for, man, I think this is my ninth year, or yeah, 8 years plus. So previously I was an architectural designer. For 15 years, I did custom home design, blueprints, drew construction drawings, worked with a lot of large builders, small builders, developers, all pretty much in the residential space. So, as with any career, there at some point there's a ceiling, right? At some point there's a salary ceiling. I was one below vice president of this small company, and one day just kind of like, well, where else am I going to go from here? Am I going to get like a massive salary bump or a change of lifestyle? And the answer was no. Really, that was the short of it. So, okay, what can we go into that really has no ceiling? Any kind of sales, right? I chose real estate thinking that I had this experience in a residential, home space, thinking that there could be a parallel there, that I know how homes are built. I know how the construction process goes. I have a lot of great contacts and great networking within those industries. So that's really how I made a choice to jump into real estate. So that was at the very end of 2015. Yeah, jumped right in, had the normal kind of challenges as a new agent has. Nothing in my pipeline, brand new, not knowing where to go. I ended up being the first deal I closed. I was 4 months in to a really good friend of mine. And then after that, I really, really went hard on some things we'll probably get into. Long story short, my first year I closed 15 deals, 14 more after that initial one before the end of the year. The following year, I closed 39, 40 ish. And then right after that, it was 43. After that, it was 49. And, fast forward after, kind of hitting some big lofty goals, right? Handling all I could handle as far as a solo agent goes. I kind of pulled back a little bit. I have a young family. I have a 10-year-old daughter, I have a 6-year-old son. Those things are a lot more important to me than selling 50 houses a year, right? So I kind of just dialed in my business to where I do plenty of business. I have plenty of quality time with my family. I have great systems in place that allow me the freedom um, to do the things I want to do. And then as of the past couple years, being on an educational staff in my brokerage, helping other agents grow, kind of really pouring more into those folks, moving into more service, right? I think there's plenty for all of us to eat out there, and too many people kind of hold on to some secrets. And I say secrets for lack of a better word. There really is no secrets. But that's pretty much how we landed here.
That's awesome. And I know you mentioned kind of like one of the things that, you really built your business on is that, time, family, work, family balance and things like that. And you hear so many stories of, just agents just working 50, 60 hours every week and just hustling. And I know you have a very unique perspective on that and kind of how you built your business. So like, yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So it really, really, truly comes down to being disciplined about your day-to-day schedule and knowing exactly what you're going into, right? So if you were to look at your day, you look at tomorrow, right? Number one, you have a clear goal or I'm sorry, a clear vision on your goals, where you want to go. What are you trying to accomplish, right? Do you want to just sell 12 houses a year, one a month? And that's great. But if you want 3 to 5, what does that look like? So knowing those goals, that's going to be huge, right? Knowing what it takes to meet those, right? So that's all in metrics, and that's a whole deeper conversation. But then it's really planning my day tomorrow of what it's going to take to hit those metrics. So it comes down to being disciplined on your time. If I say from this time to this time, I'm lead genning, from this time to this time, I am following up, from this time to this time, I'm going to be, touching base with my sphere, or whatever it is. Right? But if there's very few money making activities that we could do as realtors, there's not a million things that are money making activities. So I would dial all that in into the morning, like at 8 to noon, 9 to noonish time frame. I left my afternoons open for appointments. We all know we don't have appointments every single day. So essentially that, and it's great if you have them most days out of the week, but it's not going to be every single day. If it is, it's not going to last very long. Let's put it that way. You'll keep you keep hearing me referring back to being disciplined about your schedule, because none of us are motivated all the time. None of us feel like doing it all the time. Not many people are excited about making $100 a day or following up with leads that you got, overnight. Nobody's super excited about that 365 days out of the year, but being disciplined to do it. So it's really knowing your goals, setting your schedule, being disciplined to stick to it. And everybody's heard the saying, discipline equals freedom. Jocko says, right? But it's really true. The more disciplined we are, then the more freedom, which equates into free time, really, that we're going to
I love that. And I think, like, to your point, like, just because you're working 50 to 60 hours a week doesn't mean you're actually productive and you're doing the right things, like you said. So I know we've talked about a lot, like having, like, working like 20 to 30 hours a week and making sure that work is actually things that matter, And I think, like, to your point, just because you are working a lot doesn't mean you're doing the things that are actually moving the needle forward, producing income producing activities. So I love that take on it because, like, average agent salary is so low, but yet the working hours. So it's obviously there's a discrepancy or like a disconnect there.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. And we all fall into it. I do too. I still fall into it, right? You kind of get a little bit lost and maybe you don't think about tomorrow enough, or maybe you don't have a brain dump at the end of the day to kind of clean everything up, to defrag a little bit. And then that sends you into chaos and playing defense. And as soon as you start going into chaos and playing defense, then everything starts to slip. And then you feel behind, and all of a sudden it's 8-10 hours of the day has gone by, and you feel like you've done absolutely nothing. Nobody's perfect. We all fall into it, but again, be disciplined. Know exactly what you need to do to get back on track.
Yeah, I think that's good. And it's like there's a balance there, like, because you do need to be disciplined and I think what you're saying is like being disciplined, but also like creating habits that set you up, because part of being disciplined is just creating a routine and a habit, like you said, around mornings, like you do your prospecting, doing the things that really matter the first thing. Something I like to do is like have, like, when I have like my to-do list or things, like put things on the top and the first thing in the morning that, like, it's not huge, like long task things, just to feel like you're being productive and crossing things off. I love that. And kind of talk about more, because obviously, like, I mean, you've spoken and coached a lot of real estate agents, and we'll talk more about that later, what you're doing now and how we're partnering together now. But I guess for you, like, I hear agents all the time, I'm sure you have to, like, oh, I want to hit this many deals, I want to get to this much GCI per year. But like, there's not really a clear path of like what is missing, how to get there, all those things. Like, how do you kind of think about that and, create an actionable plan for agents to get to where they want to?
Yeah. So for me, it came down to I finally hired a really, really good coach and spent the money on it. And when it comes down to coaching and whether people want to invest in it, a lot of people are a little hesitant because it can be expensive. And it doesn't mean just because it's expensive, it's good. It doesn't mean that at all. I've spent $5,000 on a coach that was just absolute crap, right? And sometimes you have to pay those taxes, right, to until you figure it out. But really, the very first thing is like that you said, people have goals, they don't know, but they don't know have the roadmap to get there. So the very first question is like, okay, that 100K GCI, that seems to be the first big target every new realtor wants to hit. They want to hit six figures. Okay, well then what's that look like in your market? What's the average price point in your house? How many houses do you have to sell to on your commission split and your average commission in your area to make that GCI? Okay, now we have that. How are you getting in front of those people? What is your what's your closing percentage, right? So knowing, having a conversation about, okay, here's you'll hear me say metrics a lot, right? Because real estate is just math, right? All these things is just a math equation. And if you have the math equation, you could plug it in and say, okay, here's what I have to do. Now, how are we going to set 3 appointments a week with new buyers and sellers? Okay. All right. Now how are we going to get them to sign the line that is dotted to turn them into a client? Right. And it's just kind of like knowing that, where it's just, I think a lot of agents go, oh my gosh, nobody's coming to me to buy or sell a house.
And that's all you're left with, you know. And I think what you're saying is so good because it takes things from a high level, like, because I think there's something, you know, like obviously people get into real estate because of usually financial freedom or time freedom, or most of the time a combination of both, right? And then the reality starts to set in of like, this is an actual business. And to structure an actual business, you don't just have like these lofty, I think it helps. It kind of, there's a lack of accountability when you just have these like wish goals, is kind of what I call them, but there's not an actual course of action or like steps to get there, you know? So it's like, what are your inputs to get that outcome? Because if you're not getting the inputs, and the thing about that is too, is like, I like how you said, like, it's like math and numbers, because like you said, ultimately real estate is the sales industry, and that is what it is data and numbers. And sometimes that can like be intimidating people, but it's actually like really, it actually makes it more simple. And when you think about it, because if it's a number and a math, then you know, oh, these are the things I need to change to get that number, you know? So it actually makes it a lot more simple. Like your problems become less complex, I feel like,
No,
because
100%.
you
And,
can
and the
stop
good
blaming the
thing with,
market.
yeah, no, gosh, yeah. Because regardless of the market, people have the same reasons to buy and sell and move, right? There's always someone being born or someone dying. There's someone getting married or someone getting divorced. There's people, becoming empty nesters, job transplants, military transplants. From the time we were all in caves, we had to move from a small cave to a big cave, right? There was the reasons to move have never changed in human history, and they still exist. So regardless what the market is, it's going to happen. Now, will the market shrink up, right? Retract and expand? Yeah, that's always going to happen too. But the principles are always going to be the same to get more business, to get new business, right? And that doesn't mean if you in 2020, 2021, you sold 100 houses, now you might only sell 50 or 60, right? Maybe even less than that. But the work and everything is still the same. Okay. You still have to do the same activities. Those things haven't changed, and the thing with real estate, kind of going back to it being a math problem, it's really just a math equation with any sales. But the good thing about the sales in real estate is it's more about relationships. So everybody, maybe not everybody, I do. I like making new relationships. I like making new friends and expanding my network. So it's a little more personal. You're not going to a furniture salesman, you're not going to a car salesman. This is a little bit different. So it's a little more personal. So it's really, I look at it as we're creating relationships, and that's what lead generating is, in real estate. And you don't have to be so, people use the term salesy, which I hate, you know what I mean? But we don't have to be salesy. It's just concentrate on making good relationships and continue to nurture them, pour into them. And at some point they're going to do business with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think something that is interesting with like lead generation and lead conversion is, like you said, it's a relationship. And then it's also like you're building, like you have to build skills in certain areas, like how to ask the right questions. And I know like we've talked about like all those things that you can do to improve those conversion rates. So I think that's so interesting. And like you said, it is relational. So, you know, like it's, if you think about lead generation as that, it becomes less like, I don't know, it just becomes like less transaction-y, you know? And so
That's exactly it. Like, stop calling them leads. Like it's a real
people,
person,
yeah.
right? It's a human being that has the same feelings and wants and needs as you do,
Hmm.
right? So start treating them as a relationship rather than just a lead, that's just a phone number and an email address that dropped into your website. you
Yeah,
know,
it's so good.
and the majority of your conversion issues, if people have a conversion problem from a call to appointment,
Mm.
it's usually in that first conversation. How are you
Yeah.
handling those first couple conversations? What are you coming across as, right? Are you
Mm.
coming across as you just want another commission check, or are you coming
Yeah.
across as a human being talking to another human being?
Yeah, because people can feel that over the phone if you are just really desperate and like not understanding them, and if you talk
A
about
100%.
yourself and like, oh yeah, these are the sales I've done versus like, hey, like what are you needing help with? What questions can I answer? Like that's so different. I want to
And those
switch. Go
first,
ahead.
yeah, just one more thing. I'm sorry. Those first conversations will allow for your other conversions to be so much easier. So your first conversion is like the new lead, right? New person you're speaking to, you want to meet face to face. That conversation is the most important, and it will set you up for converting to signing a buyer's agreement, converting to going out to looking at homes, converting to closing a transaction with them, and then converting to putting them back in your pipeline for when they sell in another 5 to 7 years, right? So the like 80 to 90% of the work is just done by the initial conversations. So I think if you fix that, the rest is going to be just exponentially easier as you go down through the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think back to the numbers thing, it's like just measure the numbers. Like, what is your, like you said, your conversion rate from lead to appointment? And if that is wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but if that's low, then like actually listen to your conversations. Like listening back to my calls has been one of the most useful things for me because then when you're in it, you don't really recognize how you sound or how you're being conveyed. And so I think that's so helpful for people. That first conversation, like we are first impression people. Like we make judgments based on our first impression of people, not just what they say, but how they say, like how they make us feel. So that's so great. And I wanted to ask you really quick, like obviously so many agents are like talking about right now, like the NAR settlements, things like that. I want to get like your perspective on that, how you see that shift happening in July, and what that means.
I'll be honest. Besides the initial stuff that came out, I haven't paid too much attention to it. I try not to be like bothered by it until it's like right in my face. I do know for the most part, not a whole lot's really going to change, right? I think the conversations that realtors have with their sellers, like you know, you're still going to be able to offer a buyer commission. No one's telling you can't do that. I think the folks that are going to fight that are the ones that really don't like realtors anyway and really don't want to use them to begin with. So I think there's a big chunk of that is going to be gone because we don't, they're the folks we don't deal with anyway, because there's people out there that just want to do FISBOs. There's the consumers out there that really don't like realtors already before this. So that I think it's not going to be as big of an issue as we think, but it's also, hey, I'm going to educate my seller. Do you want to expose your home to the few or the many, right? So this is a part of it. If we want to make sure that we got the biggest bulk of buyers that we possibly can, because the majority of buyers are represented, that hey, let's do this. And if not, then that's fine too. You know what I mean? Then if you're on the buyer side, it is a conversation that you're going to start having to have. Hey, if I don't know why people do it, but some realtors just demand they get paid nothing less than 3%. And it seems kind of silly to me, but if that's your standard, that's fine. You should be used to having that conversation anyway. Then, hey, if the buyer commission is only going to be 2% here, I'm just going to, part of my transaction, I'm going to have to ask for an extra 1% from you guys, or a flat fee, or a transaction fee, or whatever. Like those things already exist. The agents that do it are still doing that. I personally think it's just going to be the initial shock and adjustment, the first couple of conversations, just to kind of rip the band-aid off. And then anything that changes is going to be normal business in the next year anyway. You know, I don't think we're going anywhere.
Yeah, I like that perspective. That, and I mean, even there's other countries that they've been this way for a long time, where the buyer commission isn't necessarily required, and they're still agents. So it's just a lot of other countries. There's a lot less agents, so you may see some shifts. I feel like maybe with unexperienced or newer, or like agents that aren't structuring like a business. But like you said, if you provide, I think one of the biggest things is like making sure like you're having clear communication like you said, with clients and educating them and like actually being upfront. And I know you talked about that a lot of times of like just like having a conversation and transparency and things like that. That's all that's going to be like needed, really.
Yeah, in my experience, the thing that gets consumers, buyers and sellers the most upset is surprises. It's not actually what it is that gets them upset because everybody knows hiccups happen and all that. It's the surprise. So anytime I've gone through a transaction and there's some big surprise in the middle of it, or if we're in the fourth quarter of a transaction and something goes awry and there's a big surprise, I take this opportunity like, okay, this is a conversation I have to start having earlier in the game. My whole goal, and I tell all my new clients this, my whole goal is to have you have as little surprises as possible. And you can probably tell I tend to talk fast and maybe like kind of put a lot of information out there. But again, going back to we're in a relationship business, speak to these people like you would want to be spoken to. I mean, I want to know all the things up front, hey, and I've told people like, look, there's going to be moments in this transaction where you're not going to like it. You're going to want to say, I don't even want to sell my house. I don't even want to move anymore. Just know that it's not going to always be fun and sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes there might be some frustrating moments. Bear with me. Let me take the most of that as I possibly can. You might have to make some decisions that aren't going to be exactly fun, but I want you to know that up front. Okay. There's no reason for me to jump into a relationship and just make it sound like it's a beautiful thing and it's going to be stress free and super easy, because a lot of times it's not. So it's let's set the expectation, and then there's no surprises. And they're like, all right, Jeri said we'll expect this and we'll get through it.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think it's like that's being super like it when you tell someone you're going to probably experience that. When they don't experience that, it's like, oh, great. But when they do, it's like, oh, wait, Jeri already warned us of this. And then now instead of canceling their agreement with you or canceling the listing, they're just calling you up like, hey, Jeri, I like am experiencing this thing. Like, help me walk through it, And it's like you become a partner with them versus like, oh yeah, this is gonna be amazing, it's gonna be easy. And then
Yeah,
they're
and then when
like, why
it's
didn't
not,
you tell me about that? And it's like, no. So I love that because when you prepare people for like, and then that's honesty, and it's like, oh wait, and people actually so respect that because they know like, oh, it's like this person isn't actually just trying to sell me, because if they were, then they wouldn't tell me this, and so it just builds so much credibility with people. So
yeah,
I love
no,
that.
for sure, for sure.
And I want to really quickly talk about here. I mean, obviously, like we are now like launching into something new together, and really excited about that and the future of that. And there will be a link like below this video where you can actually join, either work with us really, me and Jeri and several other coaches very closely, or we have like another option that is like a whole rebrand school. And so Jeri teaches a lot of what he's talking about business planning, business growth, lead generation, building your pipeline for success, all the things that he's done. And I teach a lot of my principles about lead generation through social media marketing, lead generation through social media and Google and all these places. And so, yeah, Jeri, why don't you kind of like talk about, I guess, like what you're really looking forward to pass on to other agents if they join this, and what that looks like from your end.
Yeah, I am excited about it because as I've had a lot of success, right? And we all have had mentors. We've all had, someone that's helped us along the way with something, whether it be a career or a sport or whatever it is, right? So once you get to that point where you've gotten where you need to go, you need to turn into who can I pour into? Who else can I pull up to get this as well? And a lot of it is just a clarity on what is your goal, and then where do we start with that, right? So I'm excited about really having the initial conversations and the ahas that happen there when you start to see the math. You can see things in front of you. We talked before, we have a whole goal setting spreadsheet that just basically allows plug and play. Here I have $100,000 GCI goal. We put that in and boom, it'll spit out all your metrics behind that, how many, based on your conversion rates. And we could assume certain percentages if you're new or if you're experienced. And then from there, like really building their day out and saying like, See, you can organize your day, right? From that, now that we know this, now we could build your day out. And the majority of the time, max, it's 4 hours of work. Like max is 4 hours in front of a computer or on the phone or doing something like that. As long as we can dial in your discipline and being able to stick to your tasks, right? And then it's really looking, I don't think enough agents look at their business from a 10,000-foot view and see, here is my database, here's my pipeline, where is how am I growing it, how am I moving it forward in real time, because your pipeline should always be, it should be feeding into, getting new leads, whether it be, paid advertising, SOI, organic stuff. You should always be throwing them into your database, and then they should always have a plan moving forward, if they're moving in 3 months, if they're moving in 18 months. One of the, so they're, and if you sprinkle all these 60-day closings to 2-year closings along a 24-month period, you can quickly see how these small activities up front will fill up this pipeline for you to constantly, and then it's going to start growing and growing and growing. And within 6 months or so, you should be closing that 3 to 5 deals a month, or at least be very close to it, depending on what your goals are. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get really excited about nuts and bolts.
Yeah. I love that. I think that like the way you I'm very much the same way. Like the way we coach and the way we help agents, it's not very woohoo mindset. Like it's like very actionable, very plug and play, very much, hey, you got to do these things so you can get to this result. And it's going to be tough. Like you're going to like wake up, like you said, you're going to wake up and you're not going to want to prospect. You're not going to want to follow up with your leads. You're not going to want to check your ads, but this is what you need to do to get there. And so I love that. And yeah,
You're right that the majority of agents get into the business because of money or freedom, and most of the time it's both. And what it takes to get there is running your real estate like a business, and having business hours and having things set aside to do, and being, because you can't just say, well, I'm a realtor, I'm self-employed, I could do whatever I want. I could sleep in, I could run around, do whatever in the middle of the day, and I could just kind of kick the can. Or you can kind of get up and get after it, and build out the life that you do want, because it'll take a little bit of time to get there. But after a year or two, and the way referral business happens and the way repeat business happens, unless you want to grow some massive team or brokerage, it doesn't have to be forever either, you know? So it all depends on your goals. Everybody's different. Some people want to sell 100 houses a year. I honestly don't. I've sold 50 and as a solo agent, and that's plenty. It all it did was take away from my quality of life personally. But there's nothing wrong with whatever your goals are, honestly.
yeah. And it's like, even if your goal is 100 houses, like then there's a path to get there. Same thing, you know? And so I love that. Thank you so much for like hopping on, Jeri. And if you guys want to like learn more about the new rebrand school and learn from me and Jeri personally, click the link below. Right now we have it priced around like less than $5 a day, less than a Starbucks drink a day. So we will be raising that price soon. So if you want to get in, make sure you click that link below. Again, thank you so much, Jeri, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we'll
Absolutely.
see.
Anytime.
I'll see you tomorrow on our coaching session. All right, appreciate it.
Yep.
Cool.
See ya.